First story. My wife 25F was caught cheating on me 24M with multiple co-workers of mine over the span of the past 4 years. What should I do? We have been together since 2015. High school sweethearts from a small town. We've had our ups and downs as all relationships do. I've always been faithful. Worst I ever did was text another person without her knowing, and I ended up telling her, even though nothing out of line was ever said. We got married in 2020 and had our first kid the same year. In 2021, through financial hardships bouncing around job to job trying to find somewhere we could stay afloat, I ended up driving a local delivery truck with insane hours. Being gone a lot, not being able to help with our child took a toll on her, and right after our child's first birthday, I caught her Snapchatting another guy married of which I worked with. She'd been talking to him for weeks, leaving the house alone for random reasons. Any chance she got and find my iPhone would take her to a random location where she'd sit for about 30+ minutes each time and refuse to answer his texts or calls until she left, with no explanation. We worked through that painfully, but managed. In 2023 we had another child. Months after we were hanging out with a friend of mine that I worked with, also married. We rode dirt bikes together and let our children, who were relatively the same age, hang out. Caught her Snapchatting him also. On Father's Day I took my brother and our youngest child out for a small ride on our Honda Pioneer. While I was gone, my mother had her second child, so my wife ran to the store alone. Find my iPhone again revealed her in an odd location for about 20 to 30 minutes. I began calling her to get no answer until after she had left and drove away from the area. She claimed Find My iPhone was incorrect about her location and that her phone wouldn't connect to her vehicle, so she wouldn't answer until it did. Here we are, 2024, 3 children in the mix now. The Monday the week before the 4th of July, I was called out of work shortly after arriving on evening shift around 6 p.m. No explanation, just that I needed to come home. Turns out that Friday and Saturday night she'd been sending 2 of my other married coworkers nudes and was caught by one of their wives. This woman and my wife got into a physical altercation, and my wife wanted to tell me herself before this other woman did. She then admitted that she'd sent nudes to the aforementioned men above from previous years. She swears she's never done anything in person with these guys. She talked dirtier to them than she ever has to me though. As a 24-year-old coal miner, I've dedicated my life to making money for my family and letting her be a stay-at-home mom. I told her after this one I wanted a divorce. She begged and pleaded that I give her one more chance. She called her OBGYN saying she thought her postpartum depression was giving her thoughts of self-harms and told them she'd had an affair. They called her in and now she is taking Zoloft and doing telemed therapy appointments weekly. She has basically insisted over and over again that if I left her she'd kill herself. She's not had an easy life, and I understand depression, anxiety and trauma will make you do crazy things. But I have no possibility of ever being able to trust another word she says to me. She wants to fix things and I've been doing my best, but I feel alone. I don't know what to do anymore. I've just numbed myself to the feelings and work my life away volunteering at work for extra hours. What can I do to help myself? What should I do to continue? What would you do in this situation? Thanks for any input. Update. Original post was a little over a week ago. Told her multiple times she had one more chance to tell me literally everything, and she promised me it was. I didn't believe her, so I'd done more digging myself and found out she had in fact met at least one of these guys in person at least once, and that was enough for me. She swears up and down all she did was sit in his truck for 15 minutes then he left. But what sense does that make? We began our divorce filing on Friday morning. She agreed to do an uncontested divorce, that way we can just get this over with quicker. Thank you to all who gave me plenty of advice. It was very helpful, especially the guy who told me it was pathetic. I was a pussy and it was partially my fault because I let this happen so many times before I left her. That was an eye-opener for sure. She did leave the house early Thursday morning claiming she was going to go Lil herself, but then came back home about 3 hours later. I know she really doesn't care all that much about it because she's at a bar with her friends right now and told me she's trying to find a man. And she's still blaming me for all of this because I didn't listen to her enough. So it's definitely done now. No turning back. Brighter days ahead for sure. She keeps the house and my truck. I keep our second house and my work truck. 50-50 custody with the kids. Can't wait to finally get out in the world and learn how to actually live my life. Second story. I don't know why I did all of this, and I really wish I did. I desperately need answers. This might be long. I'm new here and this support group was recommended by my betrayed partner. I 46 am a wayward. I had an EA with a Facebook friend that lasted a few weeks, and a much longer inappropriate friendship with a coworker that lasted years. Both overlapped into my relationship with my BP. I was also still married and separated from my ex. More context. I got married in 2007 in what I can only say was desperation to not be alone. I have an official mental illness diagnosis, but I would prefer to not use that as a crutch here, because it minimizes the fact that I made choices here. We tried to really make things work at the beginning. Tried to establish love through friendship. Even though neither of us felt like we were really in love, we failed at that. My marriage dwindled into what is better described as a roommate situation. I had my own room upstairs in the house that we had bought together. We shared meals that I would make, and have amicable chit-chat conversations, but there was no love and hadn't been. We separated in 2019 during the pandemic, although I continued living there. I reconnected my BP in 2021. We had known each other previously, but as acquaintances in the same circles, and have been living together now for over a year. She is my everything, my whole world and more. Even before we reconnected, I knew there was something about her that made her important and special. When we connected, she knew I was still married but separated, and while that was a red flag, we pursued each other. I fell for her immediately. She was also at the end of a going-nowhere relationship at the time, and we both found something in each other that neither of us could see. But I lied. A lot. I lied about the divorce proceeding. My ex had refused twice an uncontested divorce, and instead of just saying that, I told BP that I had gotten a lawyer and things were moving along. And then I lied further, saying that it was finalized. I signed over all rights and ownership to our house to her, in an attempt to get her to move forward in a divorce, and she was never going to do it. I continued to live there for 2 years of my relationship with BP, separated but still living there. And to be honest, I don't care about the house or about my ex and all the BS she put me through. It's irrelevant. I lied and continued to lie to BP about it. She confronted me 5 times, asking to see the divorce decree, and give times I lied and told her that I would contact the lawyer that didn't exist and would get her copies that didn't exist. I just kept lying, knowing I would eventually get caught. I had my head in the sand, enjoying the relationship that I had wanted all my life, while ignoring the important work I needed to do to make it permanent. Why? BP would have supported me through it, no matter how messy it got. Why did I feel so compelled to lie and to keep the lie going? What did I think I was getting away with? And why hurt BP that way? Why didn't I consider her feelings the priority? I am really struggling with answers. During the beginning of the relationship with BP, there were 2 infidelities, and I am still struggling with both. Not struggling not to cheat, struggling with the whys there too. The first was not a relationship, as it's defined. It was a friendship that predated BP with a woman I worked with. She was, at that time, my best friend at the time. I felt comfortable and not judged and safe sharing with her. It was never physical, and the emotional connection there was never one of wanting to be with one another in a relationship. Neither of us ever wanted or considered that. It became inappropriate through the content of our text messages to one another. At times, we would send each other sexually charged images, memes, and pictures from the internet to taunt one another. She taunted me because of my sexless marriage. I taunted her because she had no luck in finding anyone to be with. None of the pictures sent from either of us were ever personal, and no invitations were ever given. It was like a game, poking fun at each other's miseries, but still safe in that we both understood it was just for laughs. That was my view and understanding of it at the time. When BP came along, that activity still continued, at least once, probably twice while I was in the relationship. I stopped that, and cut her off, except in a professional context, and eventually changed jobs entirely, and 2 months after that, broke off contact entirely. I haven't spoken to her in just about 2 years. When BP found old text messages on my phone, I remembered the sexual content in them, panicked and deleted them. I don't know why I kept them. I even changed my coworker's contact name to something with a Z so she would disappear from my contact list, and our messages would disappear from view. Why didn't I delete them then? I'm still trying to answer that for myself, because the truth is, the absolute truth, they meant nothing to me, until she found them. And now, I consider what I did as the same as cheating. It was cheating. Despite there being no emotional or physical attachment, it was inappropriate to talk and act that way with someone who is not your GF while in a relationship. There's a massive amount of guilt there, and we are both struggling through it. The second instance came up today. There was a woman I knew on Facebook. I thought of her as a friend, and my recollection of how our friendship went is far different from what my text messages show. We openly flirted with one another, sexting. This took place in the first month and a half of my relationship with BP. When confronted with them, I can honestly say that I don't remember ever sending them. I read them, I sent them, but I honestly don't remember it ever being like that. The woman in question is and has always been a known flirt, and it's part of the reason I distanced myself from her and eventually unfriended her, fairly early on. But at one time, I had considered her a great friend. I even introduced BP to her online so they could be friends. What I'm struggling with is why I sent those messages when I was getting into a committed, stable, and very happy relationship. And just as importantly, why don't I remember them? BP thinks I'm full of shit and I probably would too if the shoe were on the other foot, but I honestly don't. I haven't thought about in 3 years and had no concerns with handing over my phone for her to look through my Facebook messages. I don't know what I'm looking for with this, other than to say it. I have so many questions about my own actions, my own lies, and I am struggling to answer BP's questions because I don't have answers. I am in therapy. I meet with a CBT psychologist once a week, and we are also scheduled for couples therapy with another provider. I want to do the work, I want to make this work, I want to fix this, but there's just so much to fix. BP is completely frustrated. I know with every time she asks a question how hurt and how disappointed she is. And over this, she's my whole world. Why didn't I treat her that way? Every good thing I've ever done with her for her in the last 3.5 years is now gone and undone. Because I acted like a complete ass for reasons that as of now, I can't explain. Am I insane? I have a mental health issue that I'm working through with my doctor, but that's not an explanation as to why I did any of it. I'm really lost. Really lost. I need her back. I need to get back to her. She's not just my girlfriend, she's my best friend, and my home, and my family. She's everything, and I can't lose her. If you read all this, and you have any answers at all, I'm pretty desperate to figure out how to even start. Please? Third story. Am I overreacting about my husband's friend? My 49F husband, 50M, has friend, we'll call her Linda. 43F. She worked with my husband and has known Eric for years. Late last summer, when Eric was acting division chief before he left the arsenal, she was essentially his admin, keeping his day straight, keeping him calm, etc. She got me, and when Eric was given an award from the CEO and planned his going away party, he gave her a gift card when he left. And on the back of the card, I wrote thanks for keeping an eye on him. Eric got drunk at his party, and when Linda left, he gave her a hug. No big deal. I knew he appreciated everything Linda did for him, and he was hugging a lot of people that night. But when she pulled away, he pulled her back and his hand was on her hip. And he whispered something in Linda's ear. And that hit me the wrong way. I just kind of tucked that into the back of my pocket. The next day, I read their text messages. Eric, I'm sorry I told you I care about you. I hope I didn't overstep. I just really appreciate everything you've done for me and how you've taken care of me. Linda, it's all good. I understand. Eric, good, because I don't want it to be awkward between us. Yes, that was the emoji he used. Then he started talking about how he gave me a tour of his new workplace and went to lunch that day. Last June, Eric minor surgery, and after his recovery, he started going to the gym where he worked. Even though he doesn't work there anymore, he still goes because it's free, and I know he stops by to see her and other people. And he said they message each other on Teams often. They also text each other on their Fridays off, saying happy RDO or happy nail day. Yes, he knows her schedule for her nail appointments. Every once in a while, I would zing him about his girlfriend and he'd get mad. I said something while we were on the phone with his mom, and he got super pissed at me afterwards. He was saying Linda wouldn't do anything like that. She knows about me. She's a good person. I said somebody at his old job mentioned something to me lie. And he flipped out. He wanted to know who, but I didn't give him a name because there wasn't one. It was just something I did to get a rise out of him. About 2 weeks before Christmas, there was a gathering of his old co-workers. Eric said Linda was going to invite me, but he told her not to because I could go drink with my own co-workers. Whatever, I'd rather die of thirst than drink with any of them, but our son had soccer practice, so I didn't show up. He got home before we did, and I asked if he had a good time. He said yes, and I said, I'm sure you did. He asked what I meant by that, and I just said I'm sure he had a good time seeing all the people he hasn't seen since the last time he was at his old job, and walked away from him. The next day, he said he loved me, which he usually doesn't randomly do. I asked if that was to make up for what he did the night before, and he didn't say anything. The day after, on Saturday, Eric and our son went to a day party for a friend. Ironically, this kid's father and Linda are supposedly dating, but it's hush-hush for some reason. Eric called me from the party in tears, like sobbing. I've never seen him like that before, not even when his dad or my parents died, and I thought something happened to him. Mom, because she was in the hospital. Carl, Linda's maybe boyfriend, told Eric that she was in ICU in a hospital because she has a brain aneurysm, and doctors didn't know what might happen. He was in tears, like WTF, am I supposed to say back, oh, I'm sorry the crush you don't think you have might die? Didn't seem appropriate, but neither did anything else, so I said I was sorry. Throughout the day, he's sending me updates about her. She had surgery, and she'll be in ICU for a week, but she'll be okay. Great. Wonderful, happy for everyone. The following day, Eric and our son were outside, and apparently they forgot he had a soccer game, so I yelled outside instead of saying, oh, I forgot. Eric said, is it okay to say Linda texted me to say she's alive? Again, great. Wonderful, happy for everyone. All the way to soccer game, I heard how good it was that Linda was alive and okay, and instead of watching our son's game, he was texting her at home. I just burst into tears, and when he asked what was wrong, I blamed everything on not picking up my antidepressants and not taking them for a few days. Truth. The day before my birthday, his phone rang late at night. In the middle of having sex, I told him to get it because again, his mom was in the hospital and she just had a rather serious procedure. He looked at his phone and just said, I'll take care of it later. It wasn't his mom or his sister, but Linda calling from the hospital. We went to New Jersey a few days after Christmas to see my brother, and on the way down, Eric got a text and Linda's name popped up on the display. Now, he can't not read it because that will just make him look suspicious. But I could tell he was afraid of having it read through the truck, so he played it. And great news. Linda is being discharged and she's taking him up on his offer to pick her up. WTF, I said. Sure, we'll just pick her up on the way back home if she can just hold on for a few days. He said he jokingly offered to take her out because she was sick of being in the hospital. I said whatever. The rest of the ride to New Jersey sucked. Sometime in February, I was filling out summer camp paperwork, and I added Linda as the second emergency contact for our son. Eric called me when he saw it and was all pissed off. I asked why and he said it wasn't right. I asked why isn't it right that I added your girlfriend as an emergency contact for our son. He yelled she's not my girlfriend and hung up. Sometime after that, Eric tried to have a conversation with me about Linda. He said she was a really good friend. And I have friends that are guys too, and that's the same thing. I started to cry. He mentioned Pete, an old co-worker of mine. Pete and I traveled for work. He was invited to our wedding. He watched out for me when I was pregnant when we had to walk to our parking lot at night during the winter, and I was waddling everywhere. Pete is also now 70 years old, so 20 years older, married, is helping raise his 8-year-old step-granddaughter because her mom died of an overdose, and when Pete lets his hair grow out, he bears an uncanny resemblance to Albert Einstein. It's not apples to apples. Eric then said Linda asked him to see a malpractice attorney with her on their every other Friday off because of his experience with his dad and her experience with the aneurysm. And he asked if that was okay. I told him I've never told him he couldn't do anything with a friend. But if he does go with her, he better hope his son and wife don't need him when he's with her, and walked out. Back in May, Eric went on a cross-country trip and I asked to use his laptop while he was gone since I was there. I looked through his email. Now I knew he gave money to Linda's GoFundMe thing when she was in the hospital. No big deal. What I didn't know was that he gave her $500, top donor $500 fucking dollars, and this is why he didn't give me a printout of all his credit card charges when I did taxes. In June, while we were in RI for a tournament on Father's Day, Linda sent a Happy Father's Day message bright and early, and they continued to text for 10 minutes. Well, Eric was lying in bed next to me. And last month Eric asked if he could go out with old co-workers from after work. Sure, no problem, and then he added Linda would be there, as if to challenge my response. Whatever, just go. I asked how everything was when he got home, and he said there weren't many people. All he said. A few days later, I read their texts and it was never a get-together with old co-workers. Linda and Eric had dinner so she could discuss what to do about her job. She thanked him for listening, and he thanked her in return, saying, "I'm really glad I have someone like you in my life." And they've already made plans to go out for her birthday when he gets home from a business trip, for a beer or ice cream. Am I overreacting when I think if I wasn't in the picture, something would be going on with Eric and Linda?